Ron didn't speak. He didn't move. His eyes were fixed on a point some 10 feet above the forest floor, right behind Harry. His face was livid with terror. Harry didn't even have time to turn around. There was a loud noise, and suddenly he felt something long and hairy seize him around the middle and lift him off the ground so that he was hanging, face down. Struggling, terrified, he heard more and saw Ron's legs leave the ground too. He heard Fang whimpering and howling. Next moment, he was being swept away into the darkness. Head hanging, Harry saw that what had hold of him was marching on 6 immensely long, hairy legs, the front 2 clutching him tightly below a pair of shining black pincers. Behind him, he could hear another of the creatures, no doubt carrying Ron. They were moving into the very heart of the forest. Harry could hear Fang fighting to free himself from a third monster, whining loudly, but Harry couldn't have yelled even if he had wanted to. He seemed to have left his voice back with the car in the clearing. He never knew how long he was in the creature's clutches. He only knew that the darkness suddenly lifted enough for him to see that the leaf-strewn ground was now swarming with spiders. Craning his neck sideways, he realized that they had reached the rim of a vast hollow, a hollow which had been cleared of trees, so that the stars shone brightly onto the worst scene he had ever clapped eyes upon. Spiders. Not tiny spiders like those surging over the leaves below. Spiders the size of cart horses, 8-eyed, 8-legged, black, hairy, gigantic. The massive specimen that was carrying Harry made its way down the steep slope toward a misty, domed web in the very center of the hollow, while its fellows closed in all around it, clicking their pincers excitedly at the sight of its load. Harry fell to the ground on all fours as the spider released him. Ron and Fang thudded to the ground next to him. Fang wasn't howling anymore, but cowering silently on the spot. Ron looked exactly like Harry felt. His mouth was stretched wide in a kind of silent scream, and his eyes were popping. Harry suddenly realized that the spider which had dropped him was saying something. It had been hard to tell because he clicked his pincers with every word he spoke. "Aragog," it called. "Aragog." And from the middle of the misty domed web, a spider the size of a small elephant emerged, very slowly. There was gray in the black of its body and legs, and each of the eyes on his ugly, pincered head was milky white. He was blind.
"What is it?"
he said, clicking his pincers rapidly.
"Man,"
clicked the spider who had caught Hagrid.
"Is it Hagrid?"
said Aragog, moving closer, his 8 milky eyes wandering vaguely.
"Strangers,"
clicked the spider who had brought Ron.
"Kill them,"
clicked Aragog fretfully.
"I was sleeping."
We're friends of Hagrid's," Harry shouted. His heart seemed to have left his chest to pound in his throat. Went the pincers of the spiders all around the hollow. Aragog paused.
"Hagrid has never sent men into a hollow before,"
he said slowly. "Hagrid's in trouble," said Harry, breathing very fast. That's why we've come."
"In trouble,"
said the aged spider, and Harry thought he heard concern beneath the clicking pincers.
"But why has he sent you?"
Harry thought of getting to his feet, but decided against it. He didn't think his legs would support him, so he spoke from the ground as calmly as he could. They think, up at the school, that Hagrid's been setting something on students. They've taken him to Azkaban." Hagrid clicked his pincers furiously, and all around the hollow the sound was echoed by the crowd of spiders. It was like applause, except applause didn't usually make Harry feel sick with fear.
"But that was years ago,"
said Aragog, fretfully.
"Years and years ago. I remember it well. That's why they made him leave the school. They believed that I was the monster that dwells in what they called the Chamber of Secrets. They thought that Hagrid had opened the chamber and set me free."
"And you didn't come from the Chamber of Secrets," said Harry, who could feel cold sweat on his forehead.
"I,"
clicked Aragog angrily.
"I was not born in the castle. I come from a distant land. A traveler gave me to Hagrid when I was an egg. Hagrid is only a boy, but he cared for me, hidden in a cupboard in the castle, feeding me on scraps from the table. Hagrid is my good friend and a good man. When I was discovered and blamed for the death of a girl, he protected me. I've lived here in the forest ever since, where Hagrid still visits me. He even found me a wife, Mosag, and you see how our family has grown, all through Hagrid's goodness."
Harry summoned what remained of his courage. "So you never attacked anyone?"
"Never,"
croaked the old spider.
It would have been my instinct, but from respect for Hagrid, I never harmed a human. The body of the girl who was killed was discovered in a bathroom. I never saw any part of the castle but the cupboard in which I grew up. Our kind like the dark and quiet.
But then, do you know what did kill that girl? Said Harry. Because whatever it is, it's back and it's attacking people again. His words were drowned out by a loud break of clicking and the rustling of many long legs shifting angrily. Large black shapes shifted all around him.
The thing that lives in the castle, said Aragog, is an ancient creature we spiders fear above all others. Well do I remember how I pleaded with Hagrid to let me go when I sensed the beast moving about the school.
What is it? Said Harry urgently. More loud clicking, more rustling. The spiders seemed to be closing in.
We do not speak of it,
said Aragog fiercely.
We do not name it. I never even told Hagrid the name of that dread creature, though he asked me many times.
Harry didn't want to press the subject, not with the spiders pressing closer on all sides. Aragog seemed to be tired of talking. He was backing slowly into his domed web, but his fellow spiders continued to inch slowly towards Harry and Ron. All right, we'll just go then, said Harry desperately to Aragog, hearing leaves rustling behind him.
Go,
said Aragog slowly.
I think not.
But,
my sons and daughters do not harm Hagrid on my command, but I cannot deny them fresh meat when it wanders so willingly into our midst. Goodbye, friend of Hagrid's.
Harry spun around. Feet away, towering above him, was a solid wall of spiders, clicking, and their many eyes gleaming in their ugly black heads. Even as he reached for his wand, Harry knew it was no good. There were too many of them, but as he tried to stand, ready to die fighting, a loud, long note sounded, and a blaze of light flamed through the hollow. Mr. Weasley's car was thundering down the slope, headlamps glaring, its horn screeching, knocking spiders aside. Several were thrown onto their backs, their endless legs waving in the air. The car screeched to a halt in front of Harry and Ron, and the doors flew open. "Get Fang!" Harry yelled, diving into the front seat. Ron seized the boarhound round the middle and threw him, yelping, into the back of the car. The door slammed shut. Ron didn't touch the accelerator, but the car didn't need him. The engine roared and they were off, hitting more spiders. They sped up the slope out of the hollow, and they were soon crashing through the forest, branches whipping the car windows as they wound its way cleverly through the widest gaps, following a path it obviously knew. Harry looked sideways at Ron. His mouth was still open in a silent scream, but his eyes weren't poppy anymore. Are you okay? Ron stared straight ahead, unable to speak. They smashed their way through the undergrowth, Fang howling loudly in the back seat, and Harry saw the wing mirror snap off as they squeezed past a large oak. After 10 noisy, rocky minutes, the trees thinned, and Harry could see again patches of sky. The car stopped so suddenly that they were nearly thrown into the windscreen. They had reached the edge of the forest. Fang flung himself at the window in his anxiety to get out, and when Harry opened the door, he shot off through the trees to Hagrid's house, tail between his legs. Harry got out too, and after a minute or so, Ron seemed to regain the feeling in his limbs and followed, still stiff-necked and staring. Harry gave the car a grateful pat as it reversed back into the forest and disappeared from view. Harry went back into Hagrid's cabin to get the invisibility cloak. Fang was trembling under a blanket in his basket. When Harry got outside again, he found Ron being violently sick in the pumpkin patch. "I'll follow the spiders," said Ron weakly, wiping his mouth on his sleeve. "I'll never forgive Hagrid. We're lucky to be alive." "I'll bet he thought Aragog wouldn't hurt friends of his," said Harry. "That's exactly the problem," said Ron, thumping the wall of the cabin. "He always thinks monsters aren't as bad as they're made out, and look where it's got him, a cell in Azkaban." He was shivering uncontrollably now. "What was the point of sending us in there? What we found out, I'd like to know." "That Hagrid never opened the Chamber of Secrets," said Harry, throwing the cloak over Ron and prodding him in the arm to make him walk. "That he was innocent." Ron gave a loud snort. Evidently, hatching Aragog out in a cupboard wasn't his idea of being innocent. As the castle loomed nearer, Harry twitched the cloak to make sure their feet were hidden, then pushed the creaking front doors ajar. They walked carefully back across the entrance hall and up the marble staircase, holding their breath as they passed corridors where watchful sentries were walking. At last, they reached the safety of the Gryffindor common room, where the fire had burned itself into glowing ash. They took off the cloak and climbed the winding staircase to their dormitory. Ron fell onto his bed without bothering to get undressed. Harry, however, didn't feel very sleepy. He sat on the edge of his four-poster, thinking hard about everything Aragog had said. The creature that was lurking somewhere in the castle, he thought, sounded like a sort of monster Voldemort. Even other monsters didn't want to name it. But He and Ron were no closer to finding out what it was, or how it petrified its victims. Even Hagrid had never known what was in the Chamber of Secrets. Harry swung his legs up onto the bed and leaned back against his pillows, watching the moon glinting at him through the tower window. He couldn't see what else he could do. They had hit dead ends everywhere. Riddle had caught the wrong person. The heir of Slytherin had got off, and no one could tell whether it was the same person or a different one who had opened the chamber this time. There was nobody else to ask. Harry lay down, still thinking about what Aragog said. He was becoming drowsy when what seemed like their very last hope occurred to him, and he suddenly sat bolt upright. "Run!" he hissed through the dark. "Run!" Ron woke with a yelp. Like Fangs, stared wildly around and saw Harry. "Ron, that girl who died. Aragog said she was found in a bathroom," said Harry, ignoring Neville's snuffling snores from the corner. "What if she never left the bathroom? What if she's still there?" Ron rubbed his eyes, frowning through the moonlight, and then he understood. "What, you don't think... Not Moaning Myrtle?"